And welcome back to another episode of Yes and Perhaps. We're back.
We're back. Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for checking
that
in.
intro.
Yeah, we got to work on an intro. We were thinking about it. We were just talking about it like 5 minutes ago before we hit the record button on this January 14th, 2024, second weekend of the new year.
That's wild, man. Shit is just like that. Happens when we're like just mad busy with shit.
We're moving. But yeah, we're thinking of a tagline. We have a good idea of like but it's a matter of putting that in a way, because we wanted to deliver the best listening experience that we can, and that's a big focus of ours right now.
Dopey.
And one of those things, one of the areas that we're trying to really hone in our focus on is structuring, delivering, and executing in a way that, you guys know what the hell you're tuning in for right off the bat, and that there's no, you know exactly what kind of value and what kind of experience that you're going to get with every episode. And so one of those things is having a tagline to have in the very beginning. So, it's just like it's just a cordial
some
thing
of
to
my
have.
favorite podcasts have like consistent taglines for sure. Like Bill Burr is like,
The Monday morning podcast.
yeah, whatever the fuck he does. I don't even know how he does it.
Bro, sometimes you'll be like, it's the Thursday.
Yeah.
This is Thursday before Friday. Like Hanukkah.
Yeah, some shit like that. Yeah, exactly. But to my brother's point, I think because we're not professionals at this, the structure is going to definitely come in handy to just kind of fall back on that and provide that best listening experience that we can provide. But we're not professionals like comedians where they literally talk for a living and they think about this stuff like day and night. Not to say that we don't do any thinking outside of this for sure, but I think this is a great way to kind of build up that skill. So
yeah, it's a great way to
you fail to plan to fail, and
100%. Yeah, and that's such a good point too. That most people that are starting a podcast today, more often than not, they already have something going, whether that be a business or
in the entertainment business. You like, especially the really big ones, they have like in the entertainment world anyway. They're actors or comedians or whatever. But even in the business world, right? Like they're already like used to talking in front of people and kind of being in that headspace anyway.
Yeah, and I do think that anyone can make a podcast, but when at the end of the day, it depends on the context, it depends on your audience and who you want to talk to. And from those people that already have something going, especially if they're like really, talking about celebrities, like A-list, B-list celebrities, they already have somewhat of a following, right? So
yeah, that part.
I don't know. I feel like everyone could probably do it. Have like a tagline in the beginning. I don't know. Anyway,
we're gonna play around with it. This is the beauty of not having to answer to anybody. We don't have any like. Okay, there's a double-edged sword with not having a producer, right? On the one hand, it's kind of shitty because you kind of have to produce as you're going, as opposed to someone like taking notes and like actually like running the show as like as a show. But then also like. The benefit of it is that we don't really have to kind of answer to anybody. We don't really have notes. But I think the overarching thing here is that whatever you do, like if it's a new skill, like my brother and I are trying this new skill out of podcasting and doing this doing it and recorded the way that we're recording it. I think the actual setup of this is also a skill unto itself as well. But I think the overarching theme here that's important is to practice something with intent. You know what I mean? Like you can definitely still make gains just showing up. Like showing up is definitely 100% like important, right? Like everybody's like, oh, you just got to keep showing up. You got to show up, right? But there's a difference between just showing up and showing up with intent. You know what I mean? So you like going back to jiu-jitsu, like you could definitely just go to training and like rolling is a lot of fun and not necessarily focus on like the technique that you're working on or whatever, and you'll still make gains, but those gains are going to be pretty incremental versus someone that's going to show up that goes to class with the plan like, yo, I'm going to work on this for X amount of time or whatever. I'm going to just focus on this, put myself in bad positions or whatever. Their learning curve is just going to like increase. So training with intent definitely, I think, reduces that timeline to getting to that kind of expert level. Right? Yeah. Where if you're just doing it like willy-nilly, definitely there's maybe a little bit more room for creativity there. But I think it doesn't produce the fastest results, I don't think.
And I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because along the topic of structuring and trying out new things and being intentful, we actually came prepared with a little bit of a topic for you guys. And the main topic for or theme for today's episode is exactly around what my brother just mentioned. The topic is around quitting and failure, because I think it's such a, I feel like it's such a fitting topic, especially as we start and kick off a new year.
Yep, agreed.
Because not only are people, the standard is New Year's resolutions, like what are you going to change about your life? What are you going to, what are the things you want to improve on, whether that be diet, whether that be, getting new experience, going to a new career, or whatever the case may be. But not only that, there's a lot of people that their resolutions or maybe their goals are centered around them pivoting or them moving on from things in the past to new ventures, to new. So I think there's that also happens a lot as well. We've seen that over the past couple of weeks. I saw that and I thought that it would be a good topic to talk about, because there's along that note, there's a few people that we've seen from in the social media world. It's a pretty significant.
Yeah, so tell me more about that, actually, because
you had a few people in the social media world, particularly in the YouTube world, really established tenured content creators. To name a few, there's MatPat from Game Theorists, who is a channel that a content creator that I am personally a fan of. I don't know if you've heard of him, but like he has like
Game
20,
Theorists.
Game Theorists. It's huge. 20 million subscribers. Been around the game. He's like one of the pioneers. So he's a big one.
So let me ask, is this just one-offs, or does this seem to be like a trend in like big YouTubers that are?
Well, yeah. I mean, over the past couple of weeks, it seems like there's a lot of people pivoting. Like content creators specifically. They're ending, quote unquote, ending or quitting their 10+ year careers and what what they were doing. All right. So MatPat from Game Theorists is one of them. There was Stampy, who's a Minecraft content creator, who was like, he had a pretty crazy run over the past decade as well. That is also quitting and pivoting into something else, still within the content space, but just something altogether.
So it's a bunch of them are just pivoting. They're not just like rage quitting YouTube because of reason, like because of like the new regulations or whatever. And
no, I don't think it's that. I think it's just a combination of wanting to do something new, and it's just that concept of nothing lasts forever, right? Which is also the reason why I wanted to bring it up today too, and talk to you guys about it, because you said something before the pod today, and it was that quitting is kind of, there's this disdain for quitting.
There's a stigma. There's like some stink that comes along with the word quit.
No one likes to hear it. No one likes to face it.
No one likes a quit.
No one likes a quitter.
There's literally like that saying, like no one likes a quitter. You know what I mean? Like,
but arguably, quitting, at least with within the context, it depends on context at the end of the day, right? But depending on that context, quitting and synonymously as well, failure, to go along that note, could be, as far as progression and as far as your own personal development, is probably one of the best tools that you can tap into on a micro and a macro level.
Failure, and you mean failure and quitting, or just
both? Yeah.
Oh.
Knowing when to quit, knowing when to strategically quit, knowing when to...
To me, I think they're kind of related. They're kind of synonymous, but not necessarily. And what I mean by that is like, you can fail a lot of times, but not quit. But quitting, but where they're related is like when you do quit, you're seen as like a failure, and it's that like, or you might even feel like a failure yourself, right? So if we kind of separate the two for a second, I think failing at something is just a natural part of you learning that skill if you're actually taking it somewhat seriously. You know what I mean? So if we're going to talk about like building a new skill, like this one, for example, we're going to have a bunch of failures. Like our sound the other day, the past one did not work out that well, but the key is to fucking learn, like to learn from those mistakes or whatever, and then not quit and then keep going. It's like I've been guilty of it where you try. I forget who was saying it, but there's like five. Oh, I think it was Hormozy. He was talking about like there's 5 stages of skill development or whatever, and like the first skill is like the first level is like I'm gonna butcher this, but basically what he's getting at is like the reason why a lot of people will start jumping around from different skills and whatever, and not actually get to the point where they're a purple belt of something, is because they don't get past that feeling of like, oh, like I'm not really good at this or whatever, and then they don't just push past that, and then they just end up quitting and then jumping onto the next one and not progressing past the blue belt. It's literally the same thing as the blue belt blues in jiu-jitsu, where a lot of people, like for whatever reason, end up just quitting at blue belt because some of them just get frustrated that, oh, I don't feel like a blue belt, or like I don't I'm not doing that. I'm actually not that good at this, whatever. This is really, really hard. So I think failing is definitely a necessary part of any kind of meaningful skill development or anything like that. Whereas quitting, I think, is important. Like, to your point, there's a lot of that comes with that, right? Like quitting when you can keep going, and it's like, for something that really means a lot to you, that's where you could feel like really crappy about it afterwards. You know what I mean?
Right.
You might have some regrets that come along with that. But I think, to your point, if quitting, like recognizing, you know what, actually this is not this is not good for me. Maybe I'm not in a good environment. Maybe you're not in a good workplace or whatever. Maybe your career isn't as fulfilling as you wanted it to be, and then you pivot to something else. I think that quitting actually comes with a lot of wisdom. Because otherwise, if you don't quit from that path, then you end up 30, 40 years later, it's like, shit, like, I had a chance before. Now I'm a lot older. I can't do it now. So like, woe is me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's such an interesting balance, because like you hit the nail on both of those, like very, very like, well, like I would say like that's basically what it comes down to, right? Is there's a good and there's a bad type of quit. Let me ask you this, as someone that's, you got the gym going. Again, the topic is that the bottom line is that nothing good lasts forever. And so for someone, for not even just this podcast, but for like Revo as a gym in general, like have you even considered? Because I think, as someone, especially too, in my old career, in my old job, I was doing like succession planning, financial advisory for selling businesses. And so what that basically entailed was a lot of our clients would be at the tail end of their life. Like a lot of our clients were people that were retiring, that more often than not never really even gave that thought.
They never like really planned for it. Really, well,
yeah,
you know
exactly.
What? That makes sense actually.
Right, but I think because
life creeps up on you.
Life creeps up on you.
You blink 1 second, you're like 30 years old. Blink the next, you're 60. Like shit. Like,
and if you're not prepared to pivot at that point, it's like fuck. A lot of shit can go wrong, and I've seen that firsthand from that career, which is really interesting at times. But as someone that's starting off, I mean, like one of the things that we always tell clients in that job was, like, this is something, or even just people that we're prospecting or people that we're talking to, having conversations with, is like, have you even given this any thought
on it?
Have you even reflected on it?
Right.
Have you reflected on, the point in your life where you have to pivot or persevere, right? Or continue, or to move on to the next thing, the next stage of your life. So for you, like, have you given that any thought at all?
I mean, 100%, because this is not the only thing that I have going. I mean, as it stands right now, my goal is to help develop and build this gym as best as I can, and foster that culture that we all know and love, that you can come to expect from guys that are from within our core group, right? Because I think, our culture is not unlike a lot of cultures in jiu-jitsu, don't get me wrong, but I think, I've visited different gyms and different, all over the world, and I think there's definitely something special that we have here. Obviously, I'm biased, and I think that's the more scalable thing that that we all can kind of foster, because ultimately, I mean, my partners are a little bit older than me already, right? So I think if we can develop the team internally, there's going to be people that are going to step up to want to coach want to maybe open their own gym and et cetera, right? So definitely, I don't see myself necessarily like teaching. Maybe like there might be a moment where maybe I focus on other things, but there will be people in the flanks that'll be able to step in and help out.
But in general, the answer to that would be then is that you're not looking at this as just like a phase thing. You're looking at this as more of like the long haul. Like
game. I'm thinking about those long. Yeah,
yeah.
No, I'm thinking like vision wise, Arm U Canada can like Toma's such a great. So Toma's my head coach. First, he's my only him and Dave were really my only coaches from the very beginning. I started under them. I mean, and Toma has been such a great mentor, and like I think I've learned so much just from the way that he's even handling a lot of this, and basically, like he's the head of Arm U Canada, and there's so much potential because jiu-jitsu is still very much in its infancy. It's kind of like Bitcoin, you know what I mean? Like only like the real ones really know about it, but I think we've seen it in the past. Like since we started training, how much has grown. How much did you know about jiu-jitsu before you started training jiu-jitsu? You didn't really see it.
Not much.
And now, obviously, because you're in that world now, like obviously you see it a little bit more. But just the fact that it's on UFC now, one championship, for example, will put on like jiu-jitsu matches, so it's definitely growing. So I think to kind of go back to your point, like for me, the vision right now is to grow it as much as we can. And then not necessarily to be coaching full time. I don't think that's something that as of right now anyway, like is in the long-term plan. I definitely want to keep coaching the whole time though, not necessarily like, again, full time. But yeah, I mean, there'll be others that we could get more gyms to join up with Arm U Canada. I think it's something that's part of the plan.
Do you think that coaching or the jiu-jitsu, because there's two parts to it, I would think there's the business side to it and then there's the jiu-jitsu side to it.
Yeah.
Coaching, I would think, would fall under more so the jiu-jitsu side. There's definitely the business side.
There's two parts to it for sure. Yeah.
But do you think that there's a road to go down where everything lines up and everything goes well? Arm U Canada, the brand grows and you're in multiple gyms. Do you think that it would reach a point where this passion of yours, and then this is still within the lens of like quitting/failure, but do you think that jiu-jitsu will become a point, or like the passion of jiu-jitsu that you have will turn into something that is more on the monetary side versus, or monetary/business side? Or will there always be like that passion for,
I think there's always going to be that passion. I think that's definitely something that it depends on what reasons that you're coming into it for. I mean, obviously we're a business, like we're not a charity. We want to make money. Like
right.
for anybody that's going to tell you like, oh, I'm just in it for jiu-jitsu, I don't want to make money. Like either well, yeah, I don't want to put anybody in a box, but I don't buy that. You know what I mean? Like you're in a business, and if you're doing it for the love of the game, like kudos to you 100%. But I would just say that that's the minority. You don't really see gyms that are just getting by. And you know what? At the end of the day, everyone's vision of success is different. You know what I mean? Like, so if I'm happy just making enough to pay my bill, like to pay my gym costs, to pay whatever bills and expenses that I have, then more power to you. You know what I mean? But for me, this is a business. We want to grow this as much as we can, but not lose the quality of instruction. Like this is the goal, right? Like to not lose quality in instruction, to provide as high quality of a product as we can, and that means that it's going to push me to do like ever since I started, I would be researching and actually doing homework in terms of setting up classes. So I'm not just coming into class where I'm making a class on the fly, which I've seen before from visiting different gyms. You know what I mean? We have different themes of the week. We're like, it's really cool with our sister gym at Current, like shout out those guys. Those are my guys. We are treating this as a true business. You know what I mean? And because all of us, for the most part, are in the corporate world, so we have biweekly meetings. For example, we talk, we have recap notes, we have takeaways, we have. So we're treating it as if it's an actual like business, as opposed to just kind of doing it with intent. Going back to that point. So now it's just okay, guys, we're in a business. Let's do this right. Let's actually do this with intent, as opposed to just willy nilly. You know what I mean? Like feeling things as you go by.
I just thought of this right now, but like, I feel like any kind of fitness related hobby that you have that you then turn into a business later is probably like, you couldn't ask for anything more.
It goes hand in hand.
And on the topic of quitting and failure, like what better pastime or activity or sport is there to do that is fundamentally centered and around that than jiu-jitsu? Which you can then translate to now the business aspect of it.
Yeah,
now that
exactly.
you're in the business part of that whole journey. But like for your own journey coming up, like you're at what, like year 8 now? You're
Something like that.
Brown belt, Armin
You're
Canada brown belt. Yeah.
Going 7 going to 8.
We started like 2016. Crazy. But I mean, can you speak to that a little bit about your journey and about how quitting and about how failure along your journey along the lines of jiu-jitsu, like have you ever even considered quitting? Have you ever
Never considered it? Never. Look, I think like there's always going to be peaks and valleys in terms of your love for jiu-jitsu. I think maybe that's not the right. There's always going to be peaks and valleys in terms of your priority for jiu-jitsu.
Right.
You know what I mean? There are times where jiu-jitsu is going to take a, like, you know, there are periods in my life where jiu-jitsu was like that was the top priority in terms of the time I spent and whatnot. But it was always like base level was always like, yo, that's the place where I can get a good workout. I can release any kind of not necessarily aggression's one word, like having that releasing any kind of aggression or just having that like good workout. Like we're guys, you know what I mean? At the end of the day, like we're more aggressive, generally speaking, than the fair sex, right? Like
a lot of pent up.
Not necessarily pent up. I'm not saying this in a very tactful way or anything like that, but I think, okay, so it covers a lot of bases for me. It gives you a good workout, clears your headspace. Like if you're not present when you're training jiu-jitsu, you're going to get choked out. You're going to get submitted. So I think a lot of times, being present is a challenging thing for a lot of people, especially nowadays when there's always a device in front of you and there's always a screen open, right? And I think it covers the base of from a puzzle like game type of aspect as well, because like I don't love gaming as much as you do, but there was a time where I was gaming a lot, you know what I mean? Like, and it's fun 100%, but to me, like jiu-jitsu is pretty much like a real life game basically, yeah. Right? So I think, but also just the camaraderie. I mean, man, some of the best friendships that I've made in my adult life are from jiu-jitsu. Probably 95% of them.
Yeah.
Right? Like as you get older, you don't have as many forced interactions with people. And what I mean by that is like school is a forced interaction. When you go to school, elementary school, you're basically forced to interact with other students, right? So that's where you can make a lot of friends. Obviously, like a lot of people will make a lot of friends during kids. And as you get older, like now those forced interactions start slimming down. Like now you just have work, go to the gym or whatever, or jiu-jitsu, for example. So but naturally, I think, your opportunities for just making friends in general, like just are slimmer, decrease. And I think some of just going back to that, like going back to your original question, I don't think I ever considered quitting. I knew that I always wanted to open a gym one day. So this just came sooner than I expected, to be honest with you. But I do know that there are peaks and valleys in terms of like, my love for the game. Some days, sometimes there are some periods where I'm just like, there, right? But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it.
But you stayed in the game, which is the key point. You stayed in it, which you highlighted before. There's 2 different types, right? There's the one where, you quit because of like a bad situation and which makes sense, right? Like if you're in a situation where you're not growing like a stinky career, right? You're not growing. Maybe it's a toxic environment. It's reasonable to quit, right? It's probably a good thing, arguably. And then there's the quitting where what was the other one? It was like the quitting. There's that, and then there's the good quitting. The good quitting was
quitting, like removing yourself from a bad environment.
Yes. Well, sorry. There's yeah. We talked about the good one. The bad one is quitting because, like in the case of jiu-jitsu,
If it's too challenging, or like, you
too
know what I
hard.
mean, maybe you have too large of an ego, where you're just like, I should be better
Yes.
at this. Like, why do I suck? Like some people, like I'm guilty of it as well. Just have really bad anxiety and really bad self-talk.
Right.
Self-talk is really an important thing, because a lot of times people are just like get really down on themselves and talk to themselves in such a way that they wouldn't even talk to their friend that way.
Yeah.
They're talking to themselves that way. You know what I mean? And you know, and sometimes, man, like people get hung up on just motivate. Like, look, part of it as well is like, I find meaning in jujitsu. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a form of self-expression. You know what I mean? Like the way that you take, like the techniques are your brush and the mats are your canvas.
Fuck, that's beautiful, man.
God damn.
Put that shit on a fucking poster.
You know what I mean? But that's what it is. You know what I mean? Like you are handed techniques, handed paintbrushes and paints, and then it's your application of those techniques on the mats that determine your style, your art, right? That's why, like, one of the things, you know, shout out Dave, one of the things that he always said that I wholeheartedly agree with is, I don't want to make a bunch of clones. I don't want someone to like visit our gym and then you're basically rolling with the same person, just different bodies every single time. Like everybody's like a Del Hiva player, or everybody's like a Spider player, for example. I really like it when I go to a gym where every single person has a different style. Just, you know, that you could tell that that's their personality. I think that's dope as fuck.
That is cool. That is a lot cooler for sure than having. I mean, I think both are pretty cool. There's merit to both, but I would definitely be on the side of having unique styles and building your own for the sake of like being able to just creatively express yourself, right?
Yeah.
So on just going back a little bit to the good and the bad, because there's good and bad ways to quit, like we already established. Yeah. For the bad side, what does that bad side quitting? What does that person need to do to turn it around? And like, I'd like for you to like draw from your own experience, because like as someone before, and the reason why I brought it before, you're a brown belt, you've been doing this consistently for 8 years. Jiu-jitsu, there's a lot of quitting, there's a lot of failure on a micro and a macro level, right? To your point, there's a lot of people on a macro level, and an example would be the blue belt blues. Holy fuck, that's a tongue twister. Where people would quit because maybe they're not seeing that progress, it's too hard. And then on the micro level, there's the everyday battle of, you know, being present, not being present, getting taps, taking L's. So from your own experience, how does that person that's on the bad side turn it around? And what's the value? Like, how would you explain why failing and quitting is a good thing for them?
I think it starts with trying to get to know yourself a little bit. What I mean by that is really 100%. Reflecting on, why are you doing this? Why does it add value to? Why do you enjoy it? Like, what is your like reason for taking up jiu-jitsu or taking up this new skill? Taking up anything, going on in an endeavor. Where is that place coming? Is it coming from a place of, oh, everyone's doing it, so I got to do it? Is it coming from a place of like, oh, if I don't do this, all these societal pressures are XYZ, you know what I mean, are making me feel like I should do this? So I think it starts with like, what is your meaning behind it? And then asking yourself, is it worth it? So for me, for example, like for jiu-jitsu, it's like, I can't say that I've ever considered quitting jiu-jitsu or anything like that. There was a time where I'm like, I don't know if I can ever train jiu-jitsu anymore when I first got injured. Right. And that made me bummy. Like I was really like going through it for those first couple of months. I'm like, am I going to be able to train jiu-jitsu? You know what I mean? And then at some point I actually was really like, oh man, am I even going to be able to train at all? Cause it was so painful, bro. But so the thought of quitting never occurred to me in that. But I think finding what your reason is for embarking on whatever that journey is, or like, you know, not necessarily just starting, but like when you're in the middle of it, for example, like what is your reasons for it, right? So you could be midway through, like, let's say purple belt, and you're just like, oh crap, like I really get, like, I don't really feel like I want to go to jujitsu. I don't really feel like I want to go continue going to school for this course or whatever. But then you have to think to yourself, okay, like, why did I get into it in the first place? Does it still give me that value? Is it still worth, like, why am I doing this, right?
100%.
And if the answer is, if the answer is acceptable enough for you, then you should be questioning, like, well, this feeling of quitting is just temporary. Like, I'm going to keep going. And then if that feeling still comes back to me, then maybe there's something else going on there that you haven't uncovered about yourself yet. You know what I mean?
Right.
Whereas if you think to yourself, if those reasons are not acceptable to you, then I think that's the healthy form. That's the wisdom of quitting, right? Like, like I'm midway through nursing, and like nursing school, for example, and I really don't enjoy it. I'm hearing stories of people that are already working, and it sounds like a nightmare. And the only reason why I got into this is because my parents or my family really pushed me into this, because this is something that all my cousins are they're all nurses or whatever. And if I don't continue on this path, you know, I'm gonna kind of be like not a pariah, but like it's gonna look bad on me, and it's gonna look bad on my family. If those are your reasons, and you actually, like, you know that that's not really something that you want to do, that's where you have to have the courage of saying, you know what, no, this is my life, I want to do X. Hopefully you have something else in mind. You know what I mean? Even if you don't, if you think that maybe sometimes there are times in your life where you might need to kind of like take that break and be like, you know what? I don't know what I want to do it, but I know I don't want to do that.
Yes.
Right. So not everybody has that luxury to do that, obviously. Some people have like kids, and some people have families that they have that, and then that's kind of the trap sometimes, is that you end up in a job where it's like, oh crap, if I don't leave now, you know what I mean?
That's where somewhere along the line you didn't have the wisdom.
Yeah, exactly. You didn't have the wisdom. You succumbed to perhaps societal pressures, and you know, you weren't selfish enough for yourself. You know what I mean? And I think something that Rogan said, which I really agreed with, and I actually did that as well, was he's like, you got to first off, you got to recognize that you're in that pattern in the first place, that like you're in a job that you don't fucking like, you know, you don't like it, and you want to move, you want to pivot to something else. Like, no, you got to stack up for like a year's worth of expenses. And then once you have that, quit that job, or quit that whatever you're doing, and then work on what you actually want to work on. And you've literally just bought yourself a year to do that. And a lot of times, even if it fails, you could always fall back to whatever that was, or whatever the previous thing was, right? But the beauty of taking that risk, because it is a big risk, is that it might open up a lot more doors that had you not like, you know, made that decision, wouldn't have been open for you.
Which is so true, man. I definitely resonate with that a lot. And it touches on the point that we brought up before, which is around doing it strategically. There's the wisdom /
I like that.
Right?
Yeah,
you gotta be able to think it.
You gotta have a plan. You can't just like quit and be like, oh, I have I don't have any like ways of making money.
Yes.
Right?
And that's, I mean, opening the floor up a little bit. I mean, getting a little vulnerable here, but I mean, when I look back at my life, there's you know, because everyone's gone through it. Well, not everyone, but like everyone's certainly quit and like had like big failures in their life. And I think the one for me that really stands out was when I did exactly what you mentioned, but I didn't have that strategy in mind. Well, I thought I did, where I quit my job in the middle of COVID back in 2020. And this is when I was living with you, where I thought I had a plan. I thought I knew what I wanted to do at that time, but then I didn't really execute on that plan, and I didn't really I ended up going back to my job like 8 months later. You know what I mean? And that was just, I feel like
and with a raise, mind you.
Yeah, with
I
a
remember
well,
that. I'm like, yo, Justin's the only guy that can pull that.
shout out to just the, you know,
Shout out
the
that
finesse
squad.
life.
Shout out that squad. Yeah.
Shout out squad. But yeah, I like, that's not to say like I don't look at that as a win, by the way.
Yeah.
Going back to that, I looked at that as a big failure, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Like if I were to like play back my life,
Yeah.
and like in my deathbed, not to get so like moral on you guys,
Yeah.
but
No.
100%. Like when I look back at that time, I'm like, man, I wasted a lot of time, but I kind of didn't, because again, it's that failure. It's recognizing I fucked up. I didn't use that time the best that I could.
Exactly.
And for B, C, D other reasons, the main thing is that I am kind of like looking, when I do look myself in the mirror and I see my reflection, I'm like, yeah, like that was like a big failure that I took. Like that was one. Another one was fucking quitting university.
Oh yeah.
Leaving university without telling my parents.
You want to tell that story?
Yeah, no, for sure. Because like it was also a thing too that taught me like, man, like, because I think that was the reason why I was so gung ho about finishing something. Like I ended up going to school like the year after that, and literally like I remember all the semesters that I had, I just went straight.
Yeah,
you know, like all the summers, like I didn't take any vacations during that time.
Do you remember like were you like, I don't like remember myself, but do you remember being like super pissed at me for like forcing you to tell mom and dad?
No, you know what?
Because remember, I gave you a choice. I remember I was just like,
yeah,
yo, okay, you got to tell mom and dad. I'm gonna let you do it, but I'm not gonna say anything. But you got to tell mom and dad.
I think you ended up telling them anyway.
Well, no, because I'm just like, yo, bro, if you don't say it in the next X time, I think I gave you a time limit, right? I think it was like 2 weeks. And then I asked him like, yo, have you talked to mom and dad? And you're just like, no. I'm like, all right, like let's go downstairs. And I was just like, mom, dad, Justin has something to tell you.
Yeah.
And that's where the fucking the verbal beatdown just fucking came in, bro.
I did, yeah.
But it had to be done, man. I felt like it had to be done because like you just had to rip that Band-Aid. But
100%. And I mean, like I'm honestly like, when I look back at it, like the way things panned out, like I'm kind of glad that it went as good as it could have gone, I think, with the circumstances and with the context in mind. But yeah, like when I look back, that's another big failure in my life too. But again, it's like it's all about looking back at those moments, and I don't have any like ill will towards them. I'm like, I'm not resentful that they happened or hold any grudges or anything like that, but or like wish that it could have been. I don't look at them like, what if I just like did that thing?
I get it.
They happened.
Yeah.
And they're part of my life. They're part of my story. And it's all about how, whenever I look back at them now, it's all about how I frame it and how do I use it, right? How do I leverage that into like my next thing? Like, what did I take away from that experience?
And one thing like, I think that's great. But one thing I think that you reminded me of as you were describing that is sometimes you got to show yourself grace. You can't be too hard on yourself. You know what I mean? You're your own coach, and you are gonna make mistakes. You know what I mean? And to your point, the key thing is to take the good that came out of that negative experience and then drop the rest.
It already happened.
You can't control it anymore. So what I'm getting at, sometimes there are failures that even if you don't have a plan, okay. So we just talked about, okay, if you're going to do that and then you have, you want to quit something, it's good to strategize and have a plan. But this is that wisdom came from my first big failure of an experience, which actually led to some beautiful memories too. So life's a funny thing, bro. Like, because on the one hand, we just talked about structure. We just talked about having a plan, but sometimes not having a plan can lead to beautiful things too, right? So 100%. A big failure of mine is when I got fired.
Oh, the
first job.
Yeah.
Like I got burnt out. I learned a lot. Like shout out Dave and Dave. Those are, even though I got fired, those still are my guys. Like, you know, they taught me a lot. They gave me a lot of opportunities. So shout out those guys. I'm not gonna get into like all the details as to the other stuff. Anyway, point being, I got fired and I had no plan. Right? I knew I was super unhappy. Like I was just burnt out. Like it was like class class one of like classic burnout, right? So I stopped giving a fuck, and basically that's what that led to that. Anyway, so I didn't have a plan. The only thing that I did know is I wanted to go back to Philippines, and I wanted to, because I knew at that point, 6 months into training jiu-jitsu, that I wanted to open a gym. And then one day I wanted to be able to provide yoga classes as well to go along with that. So that's when I took the yoga teacher training. So my plan was basically just work for the rest of the summer, and then fuck off to Asia.
Fuck off.
And then, and that's what I did. I didn't really have a plan beyond, I'm just going to do this yoga teacher training thing and then go to the Philippines. Right. But so I was in the red big time at that point. You know what I mean? Because
what do you mean? Oh, financially?
Yeah, financially, 100%, bro.
Yeah.
Like I had just moved back home.
And you're how old at the time?
I think I was 25, 26.
Oh.
25 was like next to no savings.
Yeah.
Like I literally just spent all my earnings just on stupid shit. Just, living downtown and whatever. So
Living life,
exactly. And to your point, at the end of the day, like all those things make up who you are today. So wouldn't have, I don't have any regrets from that time. But anyway, so even though I didn't have a plan or anything like that, aside from just that bare bones, like, I'm going to go to get my teacher training, I had no money, next to no money. I was literally living on credit, like the rest of my credit limit for those months that I was gone. But I got to tell you, that was one of the most life-changing, pivotal, not forks, but I just learned a lot in that trip about myself, about how to handle adversity, and just appreciating the small things and just being grateful. You know what I mean? Especially just being able to go back to the Philippines as well, after a bit of time of not being there. But even though that stuff happens, what I'm getting at is, as long as you have a positive outlook, even if you don't have a plan, and you kind of tell yourself, okay, I might not have a plan, but I'm gonna figure it out. That was kind of my attitude behind it. Life is a funny thing, and sometimes when you just kind of accept this is happening, whatever, this is what it is, I'm gonna just try to make the best of it. It's gonna still produce positive results.
That's so true. And I mean, as someone that's listening to that back again, at any point, did you think that what you were doing was the wrong decision? Did you think at any point throughout your journey of getting fired and then thinking okay, this trip financially is going to put me in the red, but I'm still going to go with it? Did you think that was a bad decision? At any, did any of that creep up on you? This is really financially doesn't make any sense right now? Because the only reason why I asked that is you can either strategically plan to quit, or you can just go with, and just in both so there's strategically a way to quit, but then there's also the quitting without a plan, right? Bottom line is that you're quitting that thing, and regardless of whether you have a plan or not, as long as you, like you said, have that mental fortitude to be okay, this is going to work out regardless, and I'm going to do my damnness to make sure that this works out. And you're right, I feel that's
when I came back from that trip, I beast mode turned on. 100%. I don't know if you remember that period of my that I was really on my P's and Q's at that point,
right?
You know what I mean,
exactly. And so, but it all starts from the same place of failure, or of quitting, right? And
what you were saying earlier about that still was a pot. Obviously hindsight is 2020. In the moment when you're going through that, it's a shitty feeling.
Yeah.
But now with the wisdom that I've gained from failing so many times, it's that feeling will pass.
Yes.
It will pass. Right.
Yeah, that's where I wanted
it's
to go.
Not a bit at the end of the day, unless there's bodily harm, obviously, you know what I mean? If we're just talking about your job and all that stuff, that feeling of failure will pass, but knowing that that good will come of it will put you in that kind of positive framework. Okay, I can overcome this. This is, I've been here before.
Right.
I got this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that feeling of failing stings so bad that you don't ever want to feel that again. So you're going to do everything in your power the next time to not have to feel that way again.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And where I was going with that long-winded question was, I feel like this is why someone that is coming into jiu-jitsu with an ego that I don't want to tap, I don't want to lose, I just want to win, is just, you're just setting yourself up for a long and painful road of
You just like,
failure.
yeah, you can't be too. That's why I'm saying, like, you got to show grace for yourself,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, especially if you're trying a new skill, like, you're not like,
You're not
going
gonna
to
hit
have it
all the
figured out.
time.
You're not
Yeah.
going to hit it all the time. You're going to get. This is why jiu-jitsu has fundamentally changed the way that I learn stuff and I approach new things.
Well, this is also the reason why I brought up that, like, what better skill or what better pastime to learn
100%.
and translate to a business later on, because now you have that.
I have,
and
yeah.
you're like supercharged. You know what I mean? Whereas someone
Exactly.
that makes like just a willy-nilly business for the sake of money, yeah, that's great, but
Exactly.
maybe they don't have that foundation. Jiu-jitsu and your healthy, active lifestyle in general, and all the things that you've learned in the past, you have that foundation now to translate and just kill it in the business game now, right?
Yeah.
For someone, again, that comes in and wants to win all the time and doesn't want to take L's and has that ego about themselves, it's just like it's like just so bad, man. Like, you like, if you have that about yourself right now, if you have that ego, you're just setting yourself up for just.
That's a tricky. I agree to a degree. I think that's a tricky thing though, because sometimes to accomplish unbelievable
Yes, you're right.
like achievements, you have to have that self delusion that you're that guy.
If you want to be the best, yes.
You know what
I
I'm
should have
saying?
prefaced that with the context of, if you're trying to be the best at something, like world level, world class best, then yes. But just to finish that thought, like, it's almost like you almost want to have that chip on your shoulder. The only way you get that chip on your shoulder so that you don't make the same mistakes that you do in the past is to fuck up a lot along the way.
It could be that you fucked up a lot along the way, or some shit happened to you when you're like on in your journey that you're just like, I never want to feel that feeling again. So you have that extra. That's why it's no mystery why a lot of great fighters come from like rags, like look at Pacquiao's story, for example, like literally poverty line. A lot of great fighters, a lot of great boxers or whatever, they come from that kind of upbringing. Show me a great fighter that came from like a middle class. Well, maybe not middle class, maybe not today, but I think boxing, you see a lot more where maybe they're not middle class. I think MMA, I think a lot more coming from middle class, I think. But I don't know. But what I'm getting at is that those experiences in their upbringing is like, I don't ever want to feel that way again.
100%.
So I have an opportunity here from this fighting thing or whatever other, like, just insert it with another thing that I can stay out of that. So I'm gonna strive to be the best at this.
Well, like, I think we talked about this before too, but maybe we talked about it offline. But you almost never hear about a crazy story about someone's life, like someone that lived just an exceptional life, that didn't have some kind of fucked up upbringing or fucked up past or something.
This is why I'm an advocate for bullying.
Yeah. Well, we did talk about this. We talked about this in the last episode where, like, I'm sure like all, like, probably like 90% of Nobel Prize winners probably got like bullied or ostracized,
or like
from
ostracized, to some degree, for sure.
Like, they all, if you want to achieve, you don't hear about people having exceptional achievements or exceptional lives without some kind of brutal,
some sort of funk to them.
Exactly.
Sort of funk, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like,
and that
most
funk,
interesting people that I've ever met, when you dig down, when you peel the onion layers back, usually there's something that was a funky about them to begin with. It was for better or worse. And that's why it's just like, I think this is where it goes back to what we were talking about, where, obviously when we start having kids or whatever, how would you, like, obviously you want to give them a better life than we got when we were growing up. But then I've also seen, like, we've seen it even within our own family, people that, kind of grow up with a lot of privilege, and they don't come out necessarily as the most well-rounded individuals. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, I think generally, it goes back to that theme of not, like, overcoming and not just quitting right away for especially for something that really means a lot to you is having that struggle. Like, struggling is good for you because it does build that rhino skin, that mental fortitude to be able to push through those times that you feel like you want to quit. You know what I mean? Like, people that are seeking just comfort, usually they are not the most interesting people. Not to say that like you have to be the most interesting person in the world. It's just a figure of speech. What I'm getting at is like, that doesn't constitute the most character building environment when you're just always seeking comfort.
Yeah.
Seeking discomfort, on the other hand, like that's where you can come out with a lot more character, a lot more like, add-ons to your personality, I would say, right?
And I argue that everyone should kind of look at their lives as if they were like the main character, and you can't have a sick main character without some trials and tribulations. You can't, those, whether it be on the macro level or the micro level, you got to be able to have, at the end of your journey, some scars and some stories to tell about how you did that thing and it was a fucking hard thing to do. And I would say along that same note, anything worth having or anything worth doing is going to be hard, and that's just a given, right? Like nothing. And
you don't appreciate it as much if it came easy.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean so. Like, it doesn't have that much meaning.
Right.
Or maybe it's not that it doesn't have that much meaning, or it doesn't have as much meaning as something that was very hard to attain or hard to get.
Exactly. Where there was constant failure, constant quitting, Anyway, on that topic, actually, of exceptional people, we got shifting gears a little bit, but, we're talking a lot about jiu-jitsu. We're talking a lot about failure and quitting, and of course, like that was the main topic for the show, but did want to talk to you about and pivot a little bit to
current
stuff
times.
that's happened enough.
So this is like a segment. So actually, like, for folks that are watching, for the 1 or 2 viewers that are watching, like, so we're going through like the development of that structure, right? So now we just talked about our main topic, and then now we're like, what do you think this is going to be another segment now? Like, do you think?
I don't even know, man. Like, I was just thinking, like, how the fuck do we how
do we pivot from that big topic to? Yeah, I mean, as you were saying it, I see that what you're doing. I'm like, and I was thinking, I'm like, how would we pivot from something like,
Well,
what I mean?
You brought up like the exceptional people being like exceptional, right? Like that was the topic, and now we want to pivot into away from the main theme, which we've been talking about for close to an hour now, and go into other things, extra things that we wanted to talk about that happened from this week. The first being something that was kind of related, UFC 300. Big card. Charles Oliveira versus
Ali.
Arman. I'm gonna butcher this. Sarakayan.
Beast.
Just got announced for UFC 300. Two exceptional guys that wrestling background for Arman, and then the jiu-jitsu background from Charles has probably a lifelong journey of just taking L's, you know what I mean? Or taking a lot of W's because they're motherfuckers.
Well, I mean, Charles' story in particular, when he first started in UFC, he was kind of like back and forth. He would have some good wins, but he would have some like losses that probably he should have won, right?
Yeah, right.
But then I think it wasn't until like his child was born or whatever that he like really went on a tear. Yeah,
Isn't that so funny how that's like? I mean, it makes sense.
It's a common thing, right?
It's a common thing in sports, Like, remember when Fred VanVleet? Yeah, I was just thinking that too. Yeah. Shout out to that 2019 team, man. We're talking about the 2019 Raptors team that won the chip. What a crazy. And now we have the Clippers with Kawhi, Harden,
Paul,
Westbrook, and PG. Paul George. How crazy is that? They're going all the way.
They got the money, bro.
They got the fucking money. They got the market.
And it's in California too, where that tax rate is just ugh.
But we're kind of going off rails here. But yeah, like the winner of that fight for UFC 300, that's the headlining fight, is set up to face.
Technically, so there hasn't been a headliner that's been announced just yet, from my understanding. There's a few other people that are up for that same card. I don't remember offhand, but
it's gonna be huge.
It's gonna be huge. I mean,
I wouldn't be surprised if that was
gonna be massive.
The co-main.
It probably, you know, you're probably going to have like
co-main.
3 titles on the line, to be honest with
Yeah.
you. 3, 4 titles, I bet.
But yeah, the winner of that is going to be set to face Islam.
Is it?
If Charles wins, of course, that's like the rematch there.
Yeah.
And then Arman is if he wins, that's going to be a rematch too. Islam was actually his first fight in the UFC.
Yeah.
Apparently, we learned today.
That was a crazy fight. If you haven't seen that fight before, you got to go check that out.
Right.
Do yourself a favor if you're an MMA fan.
But man, that 300 card is going to be crazy.
Yeah. No, I'm looking forward to it.
What a sick fucking job Dana has.
Dana?
Just organize these fucking.
Oh man, that guy's
mega
living.
fights.
That guy's. He's him.
Yeah.
That's Timothy right there.
And now he's also doing the
Slap.
the slap thing.
Yeah,
too.
actually, one of the guys from Hamilton BJJ, Eddie, is he's on that.
Really?
Yeah, bro, that guy's a beast.
The big guy.
Yeah, well, he's just jacked. This
Yeah.
guy's fucking jacked to the
Has he
pits,
come to
bro.
the gym? Have
No, he has. I don't think he's come by here, but he trains out of in Hamilton BJJ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's gonna be
Like
interesting.
Aaron and those guys. Shout out those guys.
What a crazy sport, man.
It's growing
that's
like
got
crazy.
potential.
I mean, man, UFC is. I think it still hasn't even popped as like that mainstream yet. I think there's
UFC?
still a lot of like. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's 100% mainstream.
Pay-per-views are
100%.
mainstream.
But I think there's still. I think it can still grow even more, honestly, which is the wild thing about it.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, it's kind of you have so many different cultures,
Mhm.
so many different styles, and so it is a truly like on the same vein as like soccer. I would put it up there as like a truly international sport. Whereas like basketball, I mean, yeah, there's international. I mean,
No,
yeah,
like
basketball's
combat
pretty
sports,
international.
man. Boxing is a great example of that as well. Like it's a lot of countries. Like, what do you need to train? You don't need
Yeah.
anything really.
Exactly.
You just need a body. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's a lot more accessible. That's why soccer's so accessible. You just need a ball.
Yeah. Let me take a pee break.
Take a pee break.
Well, yeah, let me
Pause,
take a pee break.
Pause.
Pause. Dude, you know who's been kind of I don't know if you follow or on Twitter much, but we'll get back to what we were talking about before. But just are you on Twitter much?
Yeah.
Jordan Peterson's just been going he's been going crazy on that.
Why?
Yeah,
What
I
was
don't
he
know.
saying?
He's just like he's very cynical nowadays. I feel like there's something going on behind closed doors because he's been very cynical. And one of the things that I literally woke up to it today. I was just I'm trying to get off waking up and like if I'm going to doom scroll while I'm in bed, not on Instagram or YouTube, but instead something like a little bit more educational. So on my Twitter, like I completely cleaned it up over the past weekend. It's like no more fucking people dying to like heavy machinery or getting shot.
What?
Like which is what it was.
Your
filled.
algo must have been.
Yeah,
burnt.
my algo was fucked, but I cleaned it up, and so now it's just like some good shit, like educational content
Sure.
for the most part. But I woke up to one of the things I read from JP this morning. Shout out to JP. He was like, "Don't say sorry for things that you don't need to apologize for." I find myself saying sorry a lot. I don't know if it's just a Canadian in me, but like for anything,
No, I think it's just you're generally agreeable.
true.
You know what I
Give me
mean?
that.
And I think definitely that was something I was guilty of. And I think I was, I definitely a lot more conscious of it. I live by that too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You
I
didn't do
don't-
anything wrong. You don't have to apologize.
No, I mean, look, I think
You
it
did.
also, I think that it makes an apology mean that much more from you too.
Yeah, 100%.
So even at work, I'm conscious about not saying sorry unless
Yeah.
because it's also like some people will kind of move very politically. You saying sorry is almost an admission of guilt. That's something right.
Yeah, that's good. That's definitely one way to look at it. Which is I mean you're right.
I mean that's a very specific.
It's a very specific
scenario.
way. Yeah, for
Right.
sure. But I mean crazy card coming up. Another crazy fight coming up. We were just talking about fights.
Oh
and
yes,
cards.
sir.
We have who is it? Anthony Joshua.
Francis Ngannou. Joshua.
Yeah,
AJ.
Anthony Joshua.
Joshua.
That is such a
That's so wild for Francis Ngannou, bro.
yeah, for him, I mean, he's probably loving it.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah,
But yo, I mean,
100%.
okay, to be clear, it's a 10 round. It's not for like any title or anything. But just the fact that Francis is going to go from fighting the Gypsy King, arguably one of the greatest heavyweights of all time,
In his first
boxing match,
professional
and he
boxing
knocked him
match.
down and arguably won that fight.
I thought he won that fight.
Looking back, I can like
You can make the case.
you can make the case for both,
either side,
for
which is a
both.
W.
Which is crazy
That's
to begin
a
with.
W
because
in
I thought he
itself.
was gonna get mopped, bro.
Yeah.
I thought he was gonna get mopped.
So for people that are tuning in that don't know, Francis Ngannou is formerly a UFC MMA fighter, and he's actually, the interesting fact about Francis is that he's the holder of the world's strongest punch.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Apparently, I think it was either a middleweight or a light heavyweight, and
No way, a lighter dude.
Yeah, the guys that run that like machine or whatever, they didn't want to give it to him because they wanted to always say like, oh, Francis Ngannou, because Francis has a lot of branding behind him.
Yeah, but
Oh, hang on. Pause.
another pause.
I'll give it like 10 minutes.
But he just
Shout out my boy Steven.
shout out the boy Steven.
That's the boy.
I mean, fuck, hey, we can just fucking. Yeah, Francis fighting. Anthony
Francis
Joshua.
fighting. Yeah, let's wrap this up because Steven's ready. But
Yeah, that's going to be a crazy fight. This would be Francis's second professional boxing fight. Just after, so a little bit more context. Francis fought Tyson Fury, who is currently the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world,
arguably one of the best heavyweights ever.
like top 3. You know what I mean? And he fought him the first time in his boxing career. He pivoted from MMA to boxing. Fought Tyson Fury in a crazy exhibition match that no one in that world gave him any fair shake. Like, he has, the thing that Francis had going for him in that fight was that he had one punch power knockout, and the only possible way for him to win is if he knocked Tyson Fury out cold, which in hindsight now, after the fight has happened a couple of months ago, was the furthest thing, like the most surprising, the way that no one thought of how that fight would have went is how it went. Francis, for 10 or 12 rounds, just went round for round with Tyson. He even knocked him down at one point, like you said. It went to a decision, and Tyson ended up eventually winning just on pure.
Check out the fight.
Check out the fight.
It's dope. I mean, Francis' story alone like warrants you just looking into it, honestly, because this guy,
Wild.
like, his journey before he even started training is movie level type
They're
of a
definitely
story.
gonna make a movie about that, dude.
And then everything that he did after he started training is just wild unto itself as well. So
He's set to face Anthony Joshua, who's also a motherfucker in
he's
the
a gold medal at
Olympian gold medal for UK, England. And I mean, he's also one of the best heavyweights in the world today. But I would argue he's
I think
probably
he's
not
going to
as-
get beat.
he's on the same level as Tyson. and he's probably going to get beat.
Definitely. Arguably, like, AJ was ducking.
Yeah, they were
years.
set to fight for a while. What a risky fight for Joshua.
Yeah, well, Joshua is like he's just a specimen. Like the guy's just a tank. I mean, not taking anything away from him, but like, just doesn't. I don't know, man.
I feel like he doesn't have that.
He's not the upper. He's not the upper echelon of boxing. Like I think he had very handpicked fights. I mean, he did beat some really good guys for sure. But if you put him against Deontay Wilder, I think Wilder still probably, because he has a suspect chin.
Yeah, and like suspect heart too. He does.
Yeah.
He can't really. You know,
Exactly.
I think we saw that from the Ruiz fights. Yeah, but it should be still. It should
It's
be a
going to be
banger
an
nonetheless.
it's going to be an exciting fight, 100%, regardless.
What happens to Joshua if he loses? A lot of reputation.
Yeah, that's a big L.
A big L. I mean, even after the showing that Ngannou had against Fury, that's still a big L. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, still a big L for Tyson, but like Tyson, that's the thing about
No.
boxing.
I mean for Joshua. For
Oh,
Tyson, yes, of course. Like that
Yeah.
was a big L, but like for Joshua, like people will say, oh, but he fought Tyson in a way.
Oh,
It's
I
like,
see.
no. First of all, that fight with Tyson was like a phenomenon. All right. Like that was like, that wasn't supposed to happen. And it did happen. You know, and I mean, that's just the game, right? Like you come up to like just a single night, you prepare for one night, and depending on how you're feeling that night, depending on the circumstances of that night, you don't know what the hell is going on, what kind of a camp Tyson had. You know what I mean? And it's just one night to prove of like, you know, remember what GSP said is like, there's no such thing as a champion because like you just show up one night and you perform that one night. And, you know, it's not to say that if they fought 100 times, Tyson would mop the floor with Ngannou 99 out of the 100 times or 100 out of the 100 times, right? It's just the one time he got caught, right? But for Joshua, people can't really use the excuse, I feel, that, oh, because Ngannou had a great fight against Tyson.
No, like that's boxing math, and
Yes.
boxing math, like as tempting as it is sometimes, it just doesn't pan out. You can't be like, oh, this guy beat that guy, so therefore he beats. And like
styles make fights.
Styles make fights, 100%. And to your point, like it depends on who showed up that night.
Right.
You can have an amazing training camp, but then literally the day before you start feeling like shit, and then you just show up like shit. A lot of guys shine in the gym, but then they crumble when it comes to the lights. That's just the reality of the game.
100%.
Yeah,
It should be a good one.
Yeah, it should be a good one. Really looking forward to that. I don't even know when it's happening.
I don't know when it's happening either. It's happening soon.
Yeah,
probably in the summer or something.
Well, we'll talk about it as it gets closer for sure.
Sure. But for today, we'll wrap. Thank you for tuning in.
That's it, folks.
That's it, folks.
Hell yeah, brother.
We'll catch up with you
next time.
With you next
week. In the meantime, fucking love.
Yeah, and go out there and fail at some shit.
Go out there and be somebody.
Go out there and fucking take some L's, you know.
Take some L's. Turn them into W's.
Grow up, man.
Grow up.
Peace.